There we go. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I sit to speak against the Conference Committee report on SB 1. I appreciate personally the work that was done to make this a better bill, and I appreciate the fact that the Conference Committee report adopts the House language that actually made this a better bill. The bill is not good enough for me to vote for, and I think it still has major flaws that will create problems down the road. And all I can hope is that if those problems occur, as was said on the floor, that these are likely challenges for people voting because of the language in the bill, that we come back here in 2 years and fix it. Because the worst thing we could ever do is prevent somebody from exercising their constitutional right to vote. Let me talk about that a little bit. You know, y'all never hear me talking about my family, so I'm gonna talk about my family a little bit. I guess some of y'all would be surprised that I was born in segregation. I think you would be surprised. I heard the stories of my father driving back from DC to Houston and the fear of being stopped, having to stay in black hotels, not being able to exercise all of their rights because of the fact that the world was in segregation. I grew up in a segregated neighborhood. Things were not the same for people of color, for black people in particular at that time, and that moved over and became part of the voting history of this country. The idea that barriers were put up for people to cast their ballot and become a part of this America that we all love. To have something move backwards, which nobody ever thought could really happen. You know, we think we've made progress, and then all of a sudden, there's new law that moves us back in time. And this is a part of new law that moves us back in time, back to where you have intimidation in the polling place because of poll watchers, which started during Reconstruction. How do you think Democrats got control of the House again and state governments around the country when it was done through Constitution? So with that, I know that I'm here because of the Voting Rights Act. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. This is one of the districts that was created under the Voting Rights Act to have the people elect the representative of their choice. And if they couldn't elect the representative of their choice through their vote, then they had no representation. Because prior to that, there were districts that were unequal in size and there wasn't one person, one vote. So equality of the vote is extremely important. And that's something we all need to keep in mind, that if we got rid of the county line rule now, that would affect people in rural areas and make them less likely to be able to elect the person of their choice. There are things we do in law that have negative impacts on our constituents and on our state. So I will be voting no on the Conference Committee report. I didn't sign the Conference Committee report, and I don't support the Conference Committee report. I urge you to vote no on the Conference Committee report, mainly for the reasons that John said. I think those are the legal reasons for not voting for this. But the emotional reasons for not voting for it are the fact that it creates hardship for people because of the color of their skin and their ethnicity. And I'm part of that class of people that it creates hardship for. Now I'm part of another class of people. I'm in a wheelchair. If a polling place is not accessible for somebody in a wheelchair or that's disabled, it creates a problem for them. I had a problem getting down here just to speak on this bill. Armando had to push me down here. So there are things that we don't know until we're in the position of someone who has a disability. We don't know. And so by making it more difficult for those folks to vote, and I know there were some corrections to that, but until you know, you don't know. So I would say that we have to be careful with that and look at whether or not that's had any impact on people who have particularly physical disabilities and maybe intellectual disabilities who can vote and give their voice. So I'm glad to be back on this floor, if only for the ability to vote no. My family fought to make sure that people were able to run for office, to vote. My grandmother was a slave in East Texas, in Trinity County. My grandfather came from East Texas, from Houston County. Came to Houston in the early 1900s and made their way through segregation as uneducated people who made sure that their children were educated. That came from paying taxes, from doing all the things that we all do, but they didn't reap the benefit of that. People have to reap the benefit of their government in an equal way. Let's make sure that we're not creating more divides because of somebody's ethnicity, because of their income, because of their disability, because of their gender, because of any of those situations that create differences among people. I know people did the best they could on this bill. I don't begrudge them the challenge of doing so. But it hurts. It really hurts. So with that, I urge you to vote no.